Hey, friends, welcome back to the Female Founder Unplugged podcast. I wanted to record a show today all about values because I think that they're so important for each and every one of us, first of all, as individuals, as humans, but also as leaders. And I know that so many of you that listen to the show are female founders, you're leaders in your business, you're also leaders in your life. And when we understand what we value, what we care about the most, we certainly can be more effective in our leadership. And the other part that I think is so critical in that values conversation is then how do we leverage those values in our businesses? Because they can also be foundational in the development and growth of our organizations. And so that's what I wanted to chat with you about today here on the podcast. So first and foremost, what are values? What does that mean? We hear that a lot. What do you value? These are the things that we care about the most in our life. So they start with us as an individual. They are the building blocks of who we are. So one of the most common ones that I encounter with clients all the time, because we do this values work right up front when we start coaching together. It is so critical for me to understand to be an effective coach, but also for a client to understand, for each of you to understand what are my values, that we do this work right at the start of a new engagement. So your values are, of course, these things that are most present, most important for you. One of the biggest ones that so many people have is this value of family. So use that as an example. When we talk about family as a value, what we need to do is actually define it. What does that mean? Well, for different people at different stages in their family evolution, it's going to mean different things. So, for example, for me, family has always meant, first and foremost, how I raise and am present with my four children. Well, now, recently, I've become a bit of an empty nester. My last child is going off to college. And so, family for me now means how I am present with less of my kids and more of my two little grandsons. Family for me also includes my extended family. That means my parents, my husband's parents, my children's in laws. That's what family means to me. It means all those people that I am most connected with in my world, those people that are relatives, right? And that's really an indigenous concept, is making relatives. And so family can be extended far beyond that. For some people, family includes their dearest friends, the people that have become their surrogate families. And that can be really key. Understanding, what does family mean for me? And some of that includes how I look after them, how I participate with them, the activities that we do together. So, for example, again, in my family, we travel together. We love to go on holidays together. And sometimes that travel means just a couple hours drive. Sometimes that travel means trips around the world. But for us, it's about spending that time together. It's about being present with each other in a variety of different ways. And it is about the time. So thinking about your value and how it shows up, what you do in that value is really, really key. It's also important to think about why it's important, because when we understand why it's such a big deal, why it actually has the value that it does, why it has the presence that it does, that makes it real. So for me, family is a big part of how I define myself, right? It is how I am located in my world. I'm an oldest daughter. I'm an auntie. I'm a sister. I'm a wife. I'm a mom. I'm a grandma. Those things are how I locate myself. They are how I connect. They are how I define big pieces of who I am. So that's why my family value is important to me. And yours might be different for you. So maybe you don't have a great connection with your immediate family. Maybe your family is those, people that you've created around you, that family of choice. And why is that important? Well, for some people, it's important because they don't have close relational connections with their blood relatives. They have created a family for themselves. Maybe you live across the country from your actual blood relative family. And so your definition and your why is actually about those people that you curated connections with. And so I think that's really important. What is the value? Why is it so important to you? And how do you define it for yourself? That's really key work as an individual. I think one of the most important reasons we need to ask those questions up front, we need to dig into that work, is because then we can talk about how we create boundaries. And for so many of the female founders, the small business owners that I work with, they come to me and say, I have no boundaries. I feel like I'm overworked. I feel like I'm taken advantage of. I feel like I say yes to everything and I don't know how to say no. Like I'm really terrible at that. That's a big reason why so many people and so many women come to coaching. They lose themselves. So when we define the value, we can talk about where the boundary lives. So how do I? How do I protect that family value? Well, for some of it, it is about time and space. So again, for me, it's about I don't work on the weekends. My weekends are reserved for my family. So my boundary is that I don't work Saturdays and Sundays unless it's absolutely critical because that's the time for my family. And I really want to invest with them. I want to be present with them. I want to do activities with them. I want to be able to connect with them in ways that are meaningful for all of us. And so that's one of my boundaries is that my family gets that time. And so when someone says to me, hey, can you do this thing on a Saturday? I'm looking and reflecting on my value. I'm understanding why it's so important to me. I've clearly defined it. And now I know what that boundary is. And then I can make a choice. If it's something that's not going to sacrifice time with my family, if it's something that I feel is really important or perhaps is honoring a different value, then I can make a really intentional decision that that's work I'm going to do. So perhaps it's, a conference or a workshop that I know I really want to go to. Maybe if it's even a Facebook Live, maybe it's an hour on a Saturday. I can make that intentional decision. Is this thing important? So it fits in terms of my decision making around that value and how I have created a boundary to guard my family value. I get to make a great choice and I get to feel really good about the decision, whether the decision is yes, I'm going to do this and I'm going to carve an hour out of a Saturday where it's not really busy, so I don't have to worry about it. Or no, I have committed to time with my family and it's not going to fit. Maybe they have a recording I can participate in on Monday. And that's just one example of how we need to think about our values as individuals. And again, particularly as female entrepreneurs and business owners, as leaders in our businesses and in our community, we need to be very clear and very conscientious about how we define these values. So, another value that I know is often present for people and in organizations is this value of integrity, right? And integrity, sort of the most common way to define it is doing the right thing even when nobody's watching. So I'll give you an example again from me. I was at the grocery store last night and I had, a bag full that I had picked up along my travels in the grocery store. And I rang it all through and then paid for it. And when I went to load it all back in the bag, I realized I had that little clear plastic bag that had 2 little tomatoes in it. It was in the bottom corner of the shopping bag. I didn't realize it was there. Now, we're talking a couple dollars here, but for me, that's an integrity move. Is I paused for a moment, I took those tomatoes, I started a new transaction, I rang them through, it was $1.59, and I tapped my card again to pay for that. Because not that it was expensive, not that anybody was necessarily watching, but because it's the right thing to do. I made a mistake, right? So really key that we understand what does integrity mean for us, and it's true with any value. So there's so many different ways to define what those values are for each and every one of us. And what I have for you, it'll be in the show notes, is I have a little values worksheet for you. So if you are unclear, if you feel like this is something maybe you haven't done in a while, And you really want to think carefully. You want to spend a little intentional time thinking about your values. I'll pop that in to the show notes for you so you can download it, and you can do that work yourself. And then love it if you would share that with us in the notes, in the comments. If you're watching this on social, share with us what your values are, because it's really key that we explore these really deeply, and they're always being redefined. I think that's the coolest part about values. Not that necessarily my family value is going to change. I'm always going to care about my family. That's going to be a big part of who I am. But it is going to look different over time. And we may add some nuances to it. And it's really critical that we are always reevaluating, rediscovering, and really reworking these values so that we can make sure that as we continue to evolve, they evolve with us, right? And some of them may get bigger or smaller, right? Depending on the moment in time. So I'll tell you, one of my core value is authenticity, being who I am on the daily. That's what authenticity is for me, is I get to show up as my big, beautiful, high voltage self, and I don't dull that for anybody. That's what authenticity means to me. It's going to mean something very different for each and every one of you, right? Why is that important to me? Because for many years in my HR career, I couldn't be that. I was told that I had to be something else. I had to be duller and dimmer. I had to be quieter. I couldn't ask the big, bold, beautiful questions that I wanted to ask. And when I left my corporate HR career, I absolutely committed to myself that I wouldn't be that anymore. Now, that doesn't mean that I show up like a Dallas Cowboys cheerleader in every single situation. I can use the dimmer switch on the high voltage, right? I can still be authentic, but I can be very quiet when I need to be. That's really key too, is I know how to flex that value to work in just about every situation. And I get to continue to experiment and grow with my value of authenticity. I also have a boundary that if I am required to be anything other than myself, if I am required to show up in a way that does not feel authentic for me, then it's not a place I need to be. That's the boundary. And then I can very easily say, thank you so much, but this isn't going to work for me. And I can go and do the things that will. So this is what I'm talking about when I say our personal value system. And it's really about how they all work together. So imagine when you were a little kid, you used to blow bubbles in the summer. You'd get the dippy little straw thing with the little round thing at the end, and you dip it in and you pull it out and you'd blow, and all these bubbles would come out in a bit of a clump. That's how I think about our values, is that they are all interconnected and they kind of stick together and work together. And there's a beautiful interplay between all of them. So imagine my family value, my authenticity value, and my integrity value, and how those fit together in a three-dimensional way. So they interact, because in my family, I get to be authentically who I am, and I'm loved no matter what, warts and all, as they say. And that's really critical, that that's what I get from my family. And if I'm not, then that violates that authenticity value. And I need to talk to somebody about that. We need to have a conversation. In the same token, I have to be able to act with integrity in order to be truly authentic. Because if integrity is important to me, and it very much is, then I need to be able to do what I say I am going to do in the way that is really meaningful for me, and I get to show up as my whole self. And so you can see how they start to play together in a way that is really deeply meaningful only to us, right? This is work that you have to explore as an individual, right? This is where working with a coach can be so valuable, because I can give you a worksheet to get you started, but it's actually in the nuance of the conversation that our values really come to life. And that's when we can really use them in all of our interactions, right? So the next step then, again, especially as female founders and leaders in our business, is how do we take our personal values and translate that into the business that we're trying to grow? Because that's where they really become impactful. Now, not only do I get to live them as an individual, but I get to actually bring them to life through the business that I do, through the clients I work with, and through the way I conduct myself in my organization and in my deliverables. And so they're not going to be an exact match necessarily. The interpretations might be different. That's really important. But there has to be some integrity in terms of how they connect. So again, I'll give you an example of authenticity, right? That's a deeply, deeply meaningful value for me. And it's a big value in high voltage leadership and how we go about doing business with our clients, whether it's the coaching or the consulting in this podcast, any of the workshops that I deliver. Authenticity is always crucial. So, for example, on the podcast, who you listen to every week is who you get. That's who I am in real life. I don't show up any different. I don't put on a persona to be the host of this podcast. It is me. This is how I talk. This is how I interact. This is how I connect with people. This is how I connect with you. And if you were to call me or be on a Zoom link with me, we would have exactly the same conversation. And in fact, that's why I wanted to create the podcast. And really, this season brought the unplugged level in because I wanted to be super authentic. I wanted to be real. I wanted to be really deeply connected. I want to talk about things that are really happening for female entrepreneurs right now, presently in their business. And I want to bring to you, the people that listen, real information, real advice, things that you can really take away and use, or at least get your thoughts going, get your brains whirring so that you can think deeply about how this might work for you in your business. It's also about things like integrity. So a value of integrity for a person is doing the right thing when nobody watches. A value of integrity in a business is doing the right thing even when it's not profitable. And we see lots of examples of business owners that say they have an integrity value, and then they don't do the right thing for their client. They do the right thing for themselves. And that's deeply, deeply troubling for many of us. It sure is for me. I really fundamentally struggle with that because my integrity value is so strong and it's so deeply rooted in who I am. So I do that. I do the right thing for my client because it's the right thing to do for my client, not because it makes me money. Because, and let's be clear, there is absolutely nothing wrong with making money. That's why we start these businesses in the first place. But the reality is, if I am a coach and I talk to people about their values and how they need to use them and how they need to build them and how they need to honor them, but I didn't go and do my own coaching work with my own coach, and I didn't work and practice my own values every day, do I have any integrity at all? Well, no, the answer is absolutely not. And I was just talking with someone who is struggling with that in their own business, right? They are really reacting to someone else who is not aligned with the values of the organization, and they're finding it very difficult to do the work together. And that's the truth of it. When we create values in our business, we need to weave them through our business plan. We need to weave them through all of our strategies. So, for example, our marketing strategy. If we really care about being authentic, then our marketing needs to really speak to who we are. It needs to be something that is really displaying our personality. It's really displaying how we talk, how we act, how we show up. That's integrity in our marketing. It really needs to speak to the truth of what we do or what we produce, the results we get. We need to be realistic about that, right? So, for example, as a coach, I can't guarantee that just because you work with me as a leader, that you are going to become the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. That is absolutely ludicrous, right? As a consultant that helps design people strategies that are super effective, I can't guarantee you're always going to hire the right person. There's absolutely no way for me to, there would be no integrity in that at all, right? But what I can do is guarantee that after working with me, you will be a more impactful leader, that you will be more grounded in who you are and how you want to show up and lead your people. I can guarantee that you will have a people strategy that helps drive your business, and that you will have a recruitment strategy that will help you find the right candidates. Nobody bats 1,000. Nobody picks the right person every single time. But I can help you lower the risk in some of those pieces. That has integrity for me. that I can help you do a better job and be more effective, right? So I think that's absolutely key. And the other thing that I think is important is that we need to continue to explore the values all the time. They need to be present in our organizations and in our life. We cannot just create some values and stick them up on a wall or put them in a sheet or have them on the website and then never go back and look at them again. We actually need to think about, how do we do this value? How do we live this value every single day? How does this show up in every single program and process? How do we bring this value to life in every conversation? That's what makes them real. That's what makes them present. That's what helps people feel connected to them. And values are absolutely key in creating the right culture in our organization. And I know that that culture word sounds big and complicated, and we think it's only for businesses with 2 or 3 or 400 or 1,000 employees. It's not. We have a culture in our business, even if we only have one other person working with us. There's a culture there. There's a way we get work done together. And that's the simplest definition of culture, the way we get work done together. So make no mistake, it doesn't have to be an employee. If you're like me and you have a team of contractors, you still have a culture. And what the values help us do is help us underline and underpin what that culture is. So being very thoughtful and intentional about understanding what our values are as a person, how our values translate to our leadership and our business that we're growing, is absolutely critical to then creating the culture and the workplace that we really want to have. And I think for the majority of us, the women I work with, anyways, all want to create workplaces where people love to come to work. They enjoy the work they do. They love serving the customer. They get to do things that are fun and creative and innovative. They are actually invested in the growth, and they get the vision. They see it. They understand it. They feel it in their heart. And they're really excited about being a part of that. And I do think that that's why people want to work in small businesses, because they actually get to be impactful. They get to see the results of their work every day. And as someone who has worked in larger matrixed organizations, it's not always possible to see the end result. You don't always get to finish the project or see the execution or actually feel what the client feels on the other end. That's why we come and work in small businesses, because we want to see that. We want the connection and the relationship. We want to feel like the work we do matters. And we want to feel like our values are reflected in the organization we participate with. We want to feel like our value of family is respected and understood in the organization. We want to feel like our value of integrity is the same as what the business and the business owner and the business leader define. We want to feel that connection so that when I know that I'm making a decision that's right for the client, even if it's not the most profitable one, that the business owner is going to back me up. That's why I want to come and work for an organization. And the truth is, when we've got really great defined values, when we know how we live those values every day, when we know what the boundaries are to protect those values if we have to make some decisions, well, geez, we can blend that into our recruitment strategy so we can attract the people that are going to fit with that. Those are the people that are going to stay. Those are the people that, like I said, are going to work harder. They're going to do better work. They're going to feel like, wow, these people get me. This is the perfect place to work. And I will tell you, I have done that work with clients. And I had a client not that long ago. We designed a job description and a recruitment process for that client. And they were hiring a pretty senior level manager in that business. That was part of their people strategy that we created. And the client actually sent me a recording of the interview and said, watch minute 37. And I went to that space in the video, and they said to the candidate, well, we'd love to know why you applied for the job. And the candidate said, I read the job description and it sounded like the perfect job for me. I could not wait to send in my resume. It just spoke to me on a real heart-centered level. Like I was compelled to put my application in it. And I was so excited when you called me for an interview. That's what you want. Those are the people that we want to bring into our small businesses, because when they are aligned like that, when they get it intuitively and at that gut level, they are going to do better work. They're going to deliver their very best for you every day. They're going to stay longer. They're going to connect with your clients on that next level. And ultimately, they're going to create a great deal of value in your business. They're going to be your best asset. When we have great values that we live in our organization, it makes those crunchy moments easier, those conflict moments, because we can refer back to them and say, this is about integrity. And let's remember, this is how we define integrity. This is how we do integrity. These are the behaviors. It's how we live it. And what happened here today in this circumstance with this client, this just did not line up with what we do in terms of integrity. We can have better conversations. We can help people understand more clearly, and we can use those crunchy moments to help people learn and grow. And that's really what we all want, right? So I hope that this conversation today has been really valuable for you. I'll put that values worksheet below so that you can start to think about your personal values and then how you're going to translate them into your business, how you're going to make them part of how you work every day, and weave those all the way back into your business strategy. Because ultimately, that's what's really crucial here, is that when we take our values, we're very clear about them, we can absolutely leverage them to help grow our business. And I think ultimately that's what we all want. Thank you so much for listening in today. Again, we would love to hear from you. If you want to share with us what your values are, maybe you uncovered something you didn't know about, maybe there's a new definition, or maybe you uncovered a value you didn't know existed before. Would love to hear from you. So pop that in the chat below or in the show notes. Thank you so much for being a part of the Female Founder Unplugged podcast today.